The engine of the Chevrolet sedan was cold. Peter Malkin felt the chill through the thin fabric of his trousers, a damp cold that had nothing to do with the May evening in Buenos Aires. It was the cold of absolute stillness. For 20 minutes, not a word had been spoken in the car. Beside him, Abraham Shalom shifted his weight, the leather seat groaning in protest. In the driver's seat, Zvi Aharoni stared into the rearview mirror, his gaze fixed on a point 500 meters down the road. The bus stop. The second car, the backup team, was parked just out of sight, its radio receiver silent. The operational plan, rehearsed to the second, had allocated a 4-minute window for this phase. That window had closed 16 minutes ago. The target's bus, the 203, was always on time. He always got off at the same stop. He always walked the same route home, a predictable 30-meter path to the front door of the house on Garibaldi Street. But tonight, the 7:40 p.m. bus had come and gone, and the man they knew as Ricardo Clement was not on it. The protocol was clear. A single missed appearance meant an immediate abort. The risk of compromise grew exponentially with every minute they remained stationary in this quiet, residential neighborhood. Any neighbor, any curious police patrol could unravel a plan a decade in the making. Aharoni's voice was flat, devoid of emotion. Another 5 minutes, then we pull out. Malkin didn't respond. His entire being was focused on the bus stop. His hand rested on his leg, a coiled spring of potential energy. He was the grab man. His role was simple and brutal. Intercept, immobilize, silence. The target was 54 years old, but his file indicated he was wiry and strong. Intelligence suggested he might carry a weapon, or more likely, a cyanide capsule. The takedown had to be instantaneous. No struggle, no sound. The next bus was due at 8:05 p.m. Aharoni's watch showed 8:01. The unspoken question hung in the air. Did the target know? Had they been compromised? Was he at that very moment on a train to Chile or on a boat to Paraguay? Was the entire apparatus of Mossad, the safe houses, the forged documents, the specially arranged El Al flight, all for nothing? The headlights of another 203 bus cut through the dusk. It slowed, its air brakes hissing. The car's interior was suddenly a pressure cooker. Malkin could hear his own pulse in his ears. The bus doors opened. A few passengers disembarked. A woman with a shopping bag. 2 schoolboys. Then, a man. Medium height, balding, wearing a dark coat and carrying a small briefcase. He stepped onto the curb and began walking towards them, towards the house on Garibaldi Street. It was him. Aharoni's hand moved from the steering wheel to the dashboard light switch, ready to give the signal to the second car. "Wait," Malkin whispered. The man was fumbling in his coat pocket. He pulled out a small flashlight. Its beam was weak, unsteady. Why a flashlight? He'd never used one before. Was it a signal? Was he alerting someone in the house? Was it a trap? The man was 10 meters away. 5 meters. He was parallel with the car. Aharoni flashed the interior light once. The signal. Malkin opened the door. "Un momentito, señor," he said. The Spanish words, a strange, foreign object in his mouth. The man stopped, turning. In that split second, Malkin saw his eyes. They were not the eyes of a cornered predator. They were the eyes of a tired, middle-aged clerk, startled and confused. It was enough. Malkin's body moved before his mind could second-guess. He lunged, not at the man's throat, but at his arm, twisting it behind his back while his other hand clamped over the man's mouth. The man let out a strangled, high-pitched shriek, a sound of pure terror that was instantly muffled by Malkin's glove. He was stronger than expected, bucking and kicking, his body a knot of wiry muscle. Shalom was out of the car, helping to force him into the back seat. The man's briefcase fell to the ground. Aharoni was already pulling away from the curb, a smooth, unhurried acceleration. In the back, the struggle continued. The man was thrashing, his legs kicking against the door. Shalom pinned him down. Malkin, lying on top of him, felt a sharp, metallic object press against his hand. He looked down. The man's mouth was open in a silent scream. A set of false teeth had come loose. In that moment, in the cramped, dark chaos of the getaway car, the abstract target became flesh. This was not Ricardo Clement, the nondescript clerk. This was Adolf Eichmann, the architect of the final solution, and he was in their hands. The mission, codenamed Operation Finale, did not begin in a high-tech command center. It began with a piece of paper, a letter sent from Buenos Aires to Germany in 1957. The author was Lothar Hermann, a blind German Jew who had survived Dachau. The recipient was Dr. Fritz Bauer, the Attorney General for the state of Hesse in West Germany. Bauer, a secular Jew who had himself been briefly imprisoned by the Nazis, was a man driven by a singular, unpopular mission: to force post-war Germany to confront its past by prosecuting Nazi criminals. He was a man deeply distrusted by his own government apparatus, which was riddled with former Nazi party members. Hermann's letter was explosive. He claimed his teenage daughter, Sylvia, had been dating a young man named Klaus Eichmann. The young man openly boasted that his father had been a high-ranking SS officer and that it was a tragedy the Germans had not finished the job of exterminating the Jews. Intrigued and horrified, Hermann had done his own research. He had located the family's residence and identified the father as Ricardo Clement. He was certain this man was Adolf Eichmann. Bauer knew he could not trust the German police or intelligence services. Any official inquiry would be leaked, and Eichmann would vanish. So he made a decision that bordered on treason. He contacted Israel. His first meeting with Israeli representatives in 1957 was a disappointment. Mossad, Israel's new intelligence agency, was stretched thin. Its focus was on immediate threats from neighboring Arab states. The idea of launching a complex, high-risk operation in South America to capture a long-vanished Nazi seemed like a dangerous luxury. They took the information, but filed it away. The initial intelligence check was inconclusive. For 2 years, the lead went cold. Hermann, feeling ignored, grew desperate. He wrote directly to officials in Jerusalem, his letters filled with a mix of frustration and certainty. His persistence became a problem that could no longer be ignored. The file landed on the desk of Isser Harel. As the head of Mossad, Harel was a legend. Short, intense, and utterly ruthless. He had built the agency from nothing. He was known as Little Isser, a man who micromanaged every significant operation and demanded absolute loyalty. For Harel, the capture of Nazi war criminals was not just about justice. It was a national imperative. The young state of Israel, filled with traumatized survivors, needed to prove to itself and the world that Jewish blood would no longer be spilled with impunity. Eichmann was the ultimate prize. Not a battlefield general, but a desk murderer. The man who organized the timetables, arranged the trains, and calculated the quotas for the death camps. He was the faceless bureaucrat who embodied the industrial-scale evil of the Holocaust. Harel saw in the Hermann Bauer letter not a distraction, but the mission he had been waiting for. He reactivated the file. To lead the initial reconnaissance, he chose his best agent, Zvi Aharoni. Aharoni was the perfect man for the job. German-born, he had fled to Palestine in the 1930s. He spoke fluent, unaccented German. He could blend in, ask questions, and follow a trail without raising suspicion. His official role was interrogator, but in reality, he was Mossad's premier human intelligence asset. The operational command was given to Rafi Eitan, a veteran of the pre-state Haganah militia. Eitan was a master of improvisation and logistics, a man who could build an entire operational infrastructure from scratch in a hostile environment. The muscle, the man who would perform the physical capture, was Peter Malkin. More than just a strongman, Malkin was a complex character, an artist in his spare time, whose mother and sister had been murdered in the Holocaust. For him, the mission was deeply personal. The geopolitical chessboard was treacherous. Post-war Argentina, under Juan Perón, had actively welcomed thousands of fleeing Nazi officials and collaborators. It was a safe haven, a place where men with monstrous pasts could live quiet lives under new names. A network of sympathizers, the so-called rat lines, organized by figures like Bishop Alois Hudal in Rome, had funneled these men out of Europe. By 1960, Perón was gone, but the pro-Nazi sentiment and the network of expatriates remained powerful. An official extradition request was impossible. Eichmann was not officially in Argentina. Ricardo Clement was. Any legal approach would alert him and his network, and he would disappear forever. The government of West Germany, under Chancellor Konrad Adenauer, was walking a tightrope. It wanted to project an image of a new, democratic nation, but it was also terrified of what men like Eichmann might reveal on a witness stand, specifically the extent to which current West German politicians, judges, and industrialists had been complicit in the Nazi regime. For Israel, the stakes were immense. A failed operation would be a global humiliation. A successful one that violated Argentine sovereignty would create a diplomatic firestorm. But David Ben-Gurion, Israel's founding father and prime minister, gave Harel the green light. The statute of limitations for war crimes was looming. It was now or never. The genesis of the mission was thus a confluence of factors: a blind man's obsession, a German prosecutor's courage, an intelligence chief's vision, and a prime minister's political will. The initial failure to act on Herman's 1957 tip now served as a powerful motivator. Harel would not allow another mistake. This time, there would be no doubt, no hesitation. Eichmann would be found, identified, and brought to judgment. In March 1960, Zvi Aharoni landed in Buenos Aires. He was traveling under a false name, with a forged passport, posing as a businessman. His first task was to verify the information from Lothar Hermann. He quickly discovered a major setback. The Eichmann family no longer lived at the address Hermann had provided years ago. They had moved. The trail was cold. For a week, Aharoni worked meticulously, using public records and discreet inquiries to track down the family. He finally found them. They were not living in a wealthy enclave protected by a network of Nazi sympathizers. They were living in a stark, unfinished brick house without electricity or running water on the corner of Garibaldi Street and Chacabuco Street in San Fernando, a remote, working-class suburb. The poverty of the location was the best security. No one would look for a fabled Nazi mastermind in such a humble dwelling. Aharoni rented a room nearby and began the painstaking work of surveillance. He quickly established the routine of the man known as Ricardo Clement. Every morning, he took the 203 bus to his job at a Mercedes-Benz factory. Every evening, he returned at the same time. Aharoni began documenting everything. He took notes on the man's posture, his gait, the way he carried his briefcase. He needed proof. He needed a photograph. The technology of the era was crude by modern standards. Aharoni acquired a briefcase with a hidden camera. The lens was concealed behind a small, reinforced hole. The shutter was activated by a button on the handle. The problem was getting a clear shot. The camera had a fixed focus. He had to be at a precise distance from the target, and the lighting conditions had to be perfect. On several occasions, he positioned himself along Clement's route, pretending to be a tourist or a waiting commuter. Each time, something went wrong. A passerby blocked the shot. Clement turned his head at the last second. The evening light was too dim. Finally, after days of trying, he succeeded. He got 2 reasonably clear shots of the man's face. He had the film developed at a local shop, a nerve-wracking process. Any curiosity from the shop owner could be disastrous. The developed photos were grainy, indistinct, but they showed a man with a high forehead, a receding hairline, and a thin mouth. Aharoni sent the photos to Tel Aviv via a diplomatic pouch. In Mossad headquarters, the photos were analyzed by a team of experts. They compared them to the only known official photographs of Eichmann, taken from his SS file in the 1930s. The problem was the passage of time. The man in the SS uniform was young, arrogant, full of life. The man in Aharoni's photos was aged, weary, and stooped. There was a resemblance, but it was not conclusive. Some analysts were convinced, others were doubtful. Harrell, a man who detested ambiguity, was frustrated. He needed 100% certainty. He would not risk Israeli agents and a major diplomatic incident on a maybe. He sent a message back to Aharoni. "We need more." Aharoni was stumped. How could he get closer? How could he get definitive proof? He considered and rejected several risky plans, including a bump, a staged accidental encounter to get a closer look. The risk of alerting Clement was too high. Then, his surveillance uncovered a key piece of information. Through local records, he learned that Ricardo and Vera Clement had been married on March 20th, 1935. Their silver wedding anniversary was approaching. Aharoni reasoned that even a family living in hiding would likely mark such an occasion. On the evening of March 20, 1960, a small team of agents, now bolstered by reinforcements from Europe, set up a discreet observation post with a view of the house on Garibaldi Street. They watched as the family gathered. Ricardo Clement, his wife Vera, and their sons. A small, quiet celebration. A cake was brought out. There were flowers on the table. It was a scene of mundane domesticity. This was the proof Harrell needed. While not a facial confirmation, it confirmed the family unit. The man was living with Vera Eichmann. He was raising her children. The odds of him being anyone other than Adolf Eichmann were now infinitesimally small. Harrell gave the order, "Proceed with the capture." The full team began to assemble in Buenos Aires. They traveled in small groups on different flights, with a variety of cover stories. They were businessmen, tourists, academics. They established a network of 7 safe houses across the city. Each safe house was chosen for specific reasons. One for planning, one for storing equipment, one for the grab team to lay low before the operation, and one, the most secure, for holding Eichmann after his capture. This final safe house was a rented villa, isolated and with a high wall, perfect for keeping a prisoner hidden. The core of the mission now shifted to Rafi Eitan, the operational commander. His task was to choreograph the capture and, more importantly, the exfiltration. Getting Eichmann out of Argentina was a far greater challenge than grabbing him off the street. He devised a plan that was both audacious and elegant. Israel's national airline, El Al, would be making its inaugural flight to Buenos Aires to participate in the 150th anniversary celebration of Argentina's independence. This was a diplomatic flight, which afforded it slightly less scrutiny than a commercial one. Eitan's plan was to smuggle Eichmann onto that flight, disguised as a member of the flight crew. The plan required impeccable forged documents. A forger in Mossad's European station was tasked with creating an entire identity for Eichmann: a flight crew passport, an El Al ID, and travel orders. The team also needed to be able to control their prisoner. Dr. Yona Elion, an anesthesiologist, was brought onto the team. His job was to devise a sedation plan. The drug needed to be strong enough to keep Eichmann docile for the long flight, but not so strong as to kill him or render him completely unconscious. He had to be able to walk, with assistance, to board the plane. The cover story would be that he was a crew member who had celebrated a little too enthusiastically and was drunk. As the day of the capture approached, the team faced new setbacks. The first was a communication failure. Their radios, state-of-the-art for the time, were based on high-frequency transmissions that were proving unreliable in the dense urban environment of Buenos Aires. During a final rehearsal, one of the cars lost contact with the command post for a critical 30 minutes. Eitan had to devise a backup system of visual signals using flashlights and car headlights, a primitive but reliable method. The second, more serious setback occurred just 2 days before the planned grab. A local police patrol, making its usual rounds in San Fernando, slowed down as it passed the team's primary surveillance car. The car had been parked on the same street for several days, and it had attracted notice. The officers looked at the occupants, their faces suspicious. For a long, tense moment, it seemed they would stop and ask questions. Aharoni, in the driver's seat, simply nodded at them, a casual gesture of a man waiting for a friend. The patrol car hesitated, then drove on. It was a close call. The team was forced to pull out immediately and change their surveillance patterns, increasing the complexity and risk of the operation. The psychological pressure was immense. The agents were living a lie 24 hours a day, thousands of miles from home, surrounded by potential enemies. Every stranger was a potential threat. Every police car a potential disaster. Peter Malkin, the grab man, spent his days rehearsing the takedown in his mind, visualizing every possible contingency. What if Eichmann fought back? What if he shouted? What if he had a weapon? The plan was a fragile house of cards. A single gust of bad luck could bring it all down. The night of May 11th, 1960. The Chevrolet is in position. The backup car, a Buick, is 50 meters behind it, ready to block any pursuers. The minutes tick by. Eichmann is late. The tension in the car is a physical thing. 8:05 p.m. Headlights. The 203 bus. The man gets off. The fumbling with the flashlight. The signal is given. Un momentito, senor. Malkin moves. The contact is hard. Malkin's left hand covers Eichmann's mouth and nose. His right arm hooks under Eichmann's armpit and grabs his neck. He lifts him off the ground and pivots, forcing him toward the open rear door of the Chevrolet. Eichmann emits a terrifying, animalistic shriek, a sound that seems to tear through the quiet neighborhood. Malkin shoves a gloved hand into the man's mouth to silence him. The struggle is furious. Eichmann kicks and thrashes with surprising strength. Abraham Shalom pushes him from the other side, and they tumble into the back seat, a chaotic tangle of limbs. Malkin is on top, pinning Eichmann to the floor of the car. The door slams shut. Aharoni accelerates, not too fast, not too slow. Just a car pulling away from the curb. The entire event has taken less than 40 seconds. In the back, Eichmann continues to struggle. Shalom yells in Hebrew, "He's on the floor." Malkin feels for weapons, for a cyanide pill hidden in a collar or a tooth. He finds nothing. They gag him and put blacked-out goggles over his eyes. 20 minutes later, they arrive at the safe house, a secluded villa. They half carry, half drag the prisoner inside. They strip him naked and conduct a thorough search. They check under his arm for the SS blood-type tattoo. It's not there. A wave of panic washes over the team. Did they get the wrong man? Then one of the agents remembers. Late in the war, some SS officers had their tattoos removed to avoid identification. The interrogation begins. Aharoni, the only one who speaks fluent German, faces the prisoner. Eichmann, still dazed, denies everything. He insists he is Ricardo Clement. Aharoni is patient. He asks about his life, his family. Then he leans in. "What is your SS number?" he asks calmly. Eichmann hesitates. Aharoni recites it from memory, SS number 45326. He then recites Eichmann's Nazi Party number, 889895. The man's facade crumbles. He slumps in his chair. "I am Adolf Eichmann," he says, his voice a whisper. He agrees to sign a statement, confirming his identity and his willingness to be tried in Israel. The 9 days that follow are a study in surreal tension. The team keeps Eichmann chained to a bed. They feed him, talk to him, ensure his health does not fail. He is cooperative, almost servile, yet he shows no remorse. He speaks of the Holocaust as a massive logistical problem he was tasked to solve. Outside, his family and the local Nazi network are in a panic. They report him missing. The search is on. The Israeli team listens to the radio, reads the papers, feeling the net tightening around them. The exfiltration is set for May 20th. The El Al Britannia flight is on the ground at Ezeiza International Airport. The plan is put into motion. They dress Eichmann in an El Al flight attendant's uniform. Dr. Elian administers the sedative, a carefully calculated dose. They rehearse the story one last time. He is a crewman named Zev Zishroni, who became ill. They help the groggy, stumbling Eichmann into a car. The drive to the airport is the longest of their lives. Every traffic light, every police car is a potential end to the mission. They reach the airport. They pass the first checkpoint. Eitan, dressed as the head of the flight crew, presents their documents. They proceed to the special terminal for the diplomatic flight. There is one final hurdle: Argentinian passport control. Eitan presents the stack of crew passports. The officer begins stamping them one by one. He gets to Eichmann's forged passport. He looks at the photo, then at the man slumped between two other crew members. He hesitates. He looks at Eichmann again, his eyes lingering. The air in the terminal seems to solidify. Eitan leans in. "He had a few too many drinks at our farewell party," he says in Spanish with a conspiratorial smile. The officer looks at Eitan, then back at the passport. He shrugs, and he stamps it. The sound of the stamp hitting the paper is the sound of victory. They walk him across the tarmac. The engines of the Britannia are whining. They climb the stairs. As soon as the door is closed and locked, a message is sent in code to Harel in Tel Aviv. The package is delivered. On May 23, 1960, Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion stood before the Knesset, Israel's parliament. He let the chamber fall silent before making an announcement that would stun the world. I have to inform the Knesset that some time ago, one of the greatest Nazi war criminals, Adolf Eichmann, who was responsible together with the Nazi leaders for what they called the final solution of the Jewish question, was found by the Israeli security services. Adolf Eichmann is already in this country under arrest and will shortly be put on trial. The news exploded across the globe. It was a sensation. While Israel celebrated, Argentina erupted in fury. The government lodged a formal protest, accusing Israel of a flagrant violation of its national sovereignty. It was an act of state-sponsored kidnapping. The diplomatic crisis escalated rapidly. Argentina recalled its ambassador from Tel Aviv and took the case to the United Nations Security Council. For a time, it seemed the international community would condemn Israel. The fallout for the Mossad team was immediate. The agents remaining in Buenos Aires had to be exfiltrated in a hurry. The wife of one agent was briefly detained and interrogated by Argentine police before being released. The world debated the legality and morality of Israel's actions. But Ben-Gurion and Harel had achieved their primary objective. Eichmann was in their custody. The trial was prepared not just as a legal proceeding, but as a historic event. It was held in Jerusalem, televised for a global audience. For 15 weeks, the world watched as over 100 Holocaust survivors took the stand. They didn't just speak to the court, they spoke to history. They told their stories, many for the first time, detailing the horrors of the ghettos, the trains, and the camps. The trial transformed the world's understanding of the Holocaust, moving it from an abstract statistic of 6 million to a tapestry of individual human tragedies. This was the true legacy of Operation Finale. The final revelation was not a hidden treasure or secret plot. It was the unveiling of the man himself. The world expected a monster, a foaming-at-the-mouth sadist. Instead, they saw a bland, mediocre bureaucrat, a man who claimed he was just following orders, a man who spoke in cliches and officialese, utterly incapable of grasping the moral magnitude of his actions. It was this chilling normalcy that became the trial's most profound lesson. The writer Hannah Arendt, covering the trial, would later coin a phrase to describe it: the banality of evil. The ultimate purpose of the mission was never simply to execute a man. It was to force a global reckoning. By capturing the architect, Israel put the architecture of genocide on trial. The operation cemented Mossad's reputation for audacity and effectiveness. But its true lasting impact was educational and cathartic. It gave a voice to the victims, educated a new generation that had not experienced the war, and showed that the most terrifying evil can wear the mask of a simple, ordinary man just doing his job.